Hey everyone, welcome back to the Board Game Spotlight. Today we're going to look at Football Highlights 2052. This is from Eagle Griffin Games. It's for 1 to 4 players and it plays in about 45 to 60 minutes. So let's take it to the table and I'm going to tell you about it. Now by the late 2020s, football attendance was in steep decline. And baseball was starting to make changes and tinkering in the 2030s that resulted in an explosion of popularity with Baseball Highlights 2045. Now, football knew that it needed to go big or go home. So biomechanical research led to a new shock absorption material that significantly reduced injuries. Now, they were able to borrow some skills from rugby and Australian rules football, and this quickly gave new life to the game. And by the early 2050s, football was in a stage of comeback. Football Highlights 2052 marked the beginning of a new era. Football Highlights 2052 is a new strategic card game from Mike Fitzgerald that was first popularized in Baseball Highlights 2045. So let's talk about what we have. The cards in the game are multi-use. So you'll notice that there are two sides to each card. You're going to play cards for their defensive ability and you're going to play cards for their offensive ability. So what they've done is they've harkened back to the beginning days of football when players played on both sides of the ball. You'd play defense and you would play offense. So there are two ways that you can really play Football Highlights 2052. There is a draft for more advanced and experienced players, or you can take a 15 card deck that is predetermined and pre-selected with cards, and you can use those. Now, what's different in Football Highlights 2052 is that unlike Baseball Highlights, you have 5-star players on your team. And these 5-star players are really, really good. And you're actually going to draft and add cards that are support cast. These are cards that are going to support your star players. In Baseball Highlights, you would start with average players and you would draft to gain those all-stars or those star players. So what's going to happen at the beginning of the half, players are going to have the option to play an audible. Now this is similar to the pinch hit in Baseball Highlights, but the audible is going to be used in a time of defense or on offense. So you can play a card down as your audible, and this can be used later. And you're always going to draw back up to 10 cards when you audible. The first half starts with an offensive card being laid. Now, we have different types of cards. We have a run card. So here you'll notice this is a run. We have passing plays. And some of the cards in the action card deck are a new type of card called a maul. The maul card is a hybrid of rugby and Australian rules football, and they are extremely physical person-on-person defensive coverage or offensive plays like trick plays, and they can lead to some absolutely awesome offensive drives and some really fun gameplay. So we're going to start by playing an offensive card into our play area. Now the opponent is going to play a card from their hand, and they're going to play it for the defense. So here we would play this card in defense. Now what we're trying to do is we're trying to add together the same type of play. So you want to match a run with a run, and then you want to match up a helmet with a football. When you match the play type and the area of field, you get to activate the defensive ability. So in this instance, there is no gain. But this card has 2 runs, so the offensive player can choose which of these 2 to activate. So in this case, they would activate the sweep for 15 yards, and then they will move their player marker down the track trying to score a touchdown. Now, the player that used an offensive card, that card is going to get moved over into their used offensive play area, and then the player that used a defensive card is going to turn around their card and it now becomes the offensive play. So from our hand of cards, we're going to want to choose a card to play that can match up with their offensive card. So in this case, we have activated a pass on pass. So what that means is that they are not going to be able to draw an action card, which would give them more yards after the catch or additional yards after the carry. But what they will do is they will be able to gain their yards because we were not able to match up our helmet with their football. So they would gain their yardage, and then the offensive card again moves over into their used cards. Our card turns around and is now the offensive card. Now you're going to do this in a half 10 times. You have 10 cards that you're going to play out. So you have an offensive drive is 4 cards. And if you do not score before you play all 4 of your offensive cards, the way it works is your last card that is played, you'll have the opportunity to kick a field goal. Now you're going to take the current location of your drive marker and you will add together. This is the point value that you're going to add with the field goal. You're going to draw a card from the top of the action deck and it's going to give you a value. So 3 plus 1, if we were anywhere in this range, we would successfully complete a field goal because you need to have equal to or greater than the number. We're at 7 and we were not able to kick a field goal from our drive marker. In that case, our offensive drive would reset and we would start a new offensive drive. So we talked about these audible cards and how they are extremely strategic to the gameplay. So the way the audible card works is when a player looks at the offensive card that they're being presented with, and if they look at their hand and they don't have any card that would match well with that offensive card, they can instead decide to play one of their cards face down into their audible. Now you're gonna get 3 audibles. So when you do this, you can either play the card that you had laid down at the beginning of the half, or you can draw the top card of your player deck. And now this is a really great way to cycle through cards that you know you have in your player deck that you've not seen yet. So there is some press your luck aspect to this, but you're going to be able to see a lot more of your cards, and you may be able to throw away a card that you're not particularly excited to use, or you don't think you're going to be able to use it effectively. Again, once you've played all 10 of your cards in a half, that is the end of the first half. So before the second half starts, there's a player adjustment draft. So you're going to take the deck of player cards and you're going to draft out 5 new cards. Each player is going to draft 5 new cards and you're going to add those to your previous deck of 15. Now before you start the second half, you're going to remove 5 cards. So you're going to get to go through your deck, you're going to remove any cards that you think don't synergize well or don't give you the answers that you need. You're going to remove 5 of those, and then you're going to start the second half with a new 15 card playbook of players. And again, you're going to play the second half just like you would the first half. You're going to play your 10 cards from your hand. You're going to play them in sets of 4 for an offensive drive. You're trying to score a touchdown through the air or on the ground. And at the end of the second half, whoever has the most points is going to be declared the winner. There is a drafting option for more experienced players. Football Highlights 2052 is an incredibly thematic and immersive football experience. The way that you have to think about the way you're setting up your cards. Do you want to stop your opponent on defense but play a suboptimal offense card? Or do you allow them to gain yardage but set up a spectacular offensive play? Do you audible? When do you audible? I mean, the strategy is just incredible inside of Football Highlights 2052. The multi-use cards adds a whole new layer of depth to this design that Mike Fitzgerald has developed. And if you're a fan of Baseball Highlights 2045, Football Highlights 2052 is an absolute no-brainer. If anything that you've seen today is interesting to you, if you want to know more about Football Highlights 2052, take a look at the description below for a link to the Kickstarter campaign. This has been Derek with the Board Game Spotlight, and this has been your preview of Football Highlights 2052.